Hello, everyone. Welcome to the last session of the day. I know that the room is extremely crowded, so if there's standing room at the back, just kind of squeeze in, find some seats in the middle. We're going to have a good time. Thank you for joining me at this last session of the day. My name is actually Stevenson. I run product marketing at ForgeRock. And I think the first thing I should do is kind of talk to you about what do I mean by this title, Multiple Journeys, One Solution. So the multiple journeys part. Multiple journeys talks about, or means, the different journeys that different types of identities take, right? So it's your customer identity and access management journey, it's your workforce identity and access management, and it's your connected devices. And one solution really means not about my company's solution or your company's solution, it's about modern identity and how these things all come together into a single solution, because in my role, what I'm seeing in the marketplace is I'm seeing a demand from customers to bring these things together. The drive for convergence, right? So we hear a lot these days about modernizing digital identity, but what does modern identity really look like? So this is what I think it looks like. We've got anyone who's been around identity a long time like I have, we probably started off in the workforce identity. That's where the term identity and access management came from. That was compliance driven and security focused. And then of course we moved into customer identity and access management that had its own different set of requirements, and then the identities of things. But modern identity, I would propose to you, is really about bringing all of these things together and being able to use them as a common platform, if you will, because that's what customers are starting to expect, right? And so three kind of themes here: being able to connect. That's the process of how do I actually get to do what it is I'm trying to do, because I don't wake up and say, I can't wait to go create an account or authenticate. I can't wait to not be authorized, right? It's about getting to do what you need to do, being delighted by doing it, but also having a secure experience, right? So one of the things about things is that we know that they themselves need their own sets of digital identities. They need credentials. They need authentication, authorization. They need governance. But the thing I want to point out is that they don't exist in a world by themselves. They exist on the customer side to either augment or make a business process better or more delightful or more efficient. Same thing in the workforce side, right? They're not off on the silo. They don't exist connected just because it's a cool thing. So as we go through this, you're going to see that things I have integrated with either workforce or customer experiences. So what I want to do in my talk today is I kind of want to go through and give you some examples of where these things are merging together and kind of show you, I've pulled together the different use cases of what it looks like in a customer identity and what it is in workforce identity. And I want to kind of compare how they're really, really similar to kind of make the point that we can develop ways to abstract this for our customers so that it can be sort of a single experience, right? There's common sets of requirements here. So we've got customer and workforce similarities. So what are they? Common challenges, right? But what's really needed is the same set of these four pillars here that I want to talk about. We need delightful and efficient experiences. We need seamless registration and onboarding. And as you start to look at these, you'll see some things that one of these things is a little bit more enterprise, one's a little bit more customer. We need intelligent and transparent security, and we need fast and flexible deployment. Those are some key things that identity brings as a value to the industry, right? So what I want to do is we're going to go through some of these scenarios, and it's going to be from the product owner's perspective, the identity buyer, the business. What is a problem that the business has, and how does identity help solve it? And we're going to go through it to show how some things are very much the same for customers and workforce, and some of them are really going after the same thing, but they have a little bit of differences, right? So let's get started. What are the things that are basically the same between customers and workforce? And the first one is support experience, right? So whether I'm talking about customers or whether I'm talking about an employee, a contractor, or a business partner, if I have to call, let's say as a customer, so I have to call up and there's a process that I can't do on my mobile phone, there's a process that I can't do online, and so I call, what's the first thing I have to do? Enter some kind of identifier into the phone, say the date of my birthday, and sort of authenticate myself to this machine. And then I wait, and I'm on hold, and I'm transferred, and somebody finally answers and says, okay, sir, what's your name? And can I have some other piece of information? Right? That's a bad experience. That's friction. In the workforce, it's not that much different as we get the call, we forget a password, or there's some problem we don't get access. If we have a bad support experience, it's inefficient on the workforce side, and it's friction on the customer side, and it's not helpful. So providing a good support experience is important. So on either side, identity brings value to the business because it can reduce help desk calls in the first place, so there's less calls that have to be made. But when you do have to call, you can do something like voice channel authentication and get a form of single sign-on so that when someone does pick up the phone, they know already who you are because they're already using the authentication you were forced to do in the beginning. We can also help secure the help desk or the service desk process by delegated administration so that we can know that whether you're calling in as a customer or you're calling in from an employee help desk line, that when you call in and someone's able to access your information, that it's secured and what they're doing is audited and it's done in a way that makes sense. So support and support experience is important on both sides. What about privacy? Privacy is just as important in the enterprise as it is out for customers. So from a customer perspective, if the company uses the user's data in a way that they didn't authorize or the way that they don't like, that can have a brand reputation impact. And even inside a corporation, privacy is important for your HR data and other different things that the company's required to keep private, right? So identity can bring value to privacy by enabling granular data sharing control, user-managed access protocol, the ability to actually have a user control what things are shared and when, right? So from a consumer point, increasing brand trust because you know that they're protecting your privacy, and regulatory compliance on both sides, right? So privacy is bridges the gap as well. What about IoT? So IoT can't just be a bucket of identities over on its own. Like I said in the beginning, it has to be integrated in order to be valuable. And there has to be relationships between the IoT devices, the customers, the organizations, and even the workforce, the employees and contractors. And there's a lot of value to the business that we're missing out on until those things get integrated. So how can identity add value to IoT engagement once it is integrated, IoT is integrated? Well, from a customer side, we get continuity of brand experience, right? Think about new systems of engagement. And what do I mean? How do we engage with people today? It's either via a screen on a tablet, on a computer, on a mobile phone. Well, what about the screen inside of your car? So from a customer perspective, if you're able to be in your car and you're able to look up at the rearview mirror or use your voice to authenticate, not a password, right? And all of a sudden, the car knows who you are. This isn't even a car that you own. Okay, let's get that straight. The language that you prefer comes down from your profile. Your Spotify account is a single sign-on into that, so you've got your Spotify music, you've got your SiriusXM subscription. Whatever other subscriptions you had, you don't have to log into each one of them. This is a new mobility scenario where you've got a car that you don't even own. All those things come up, and you've got a great experience. Right? So that can help increase customer loyalty. And on the internal side, being able to securely connect those things to the different types of devices, to the different people who use them and how they're allowed to use them and where that data is allowed to flow is really important from a security perspective as well. Finally, on the things that are the same, regulatory compliance, that's compelling on both sides, right? So identity and access management started out as a regulatory compliance need, but now in the customer side, right? There's all kinds of regulatory things from GDPR to HIPAA, healthcare regulations, to all different types of things that have to be met. So digital identity helps that on both sides by being able to generate automated reports, helping pass audits, right? And being able to avoid financial penalties, whether we're talking about the internal enterprise side or if we're talking about the customer side. So these things are common. Now, what are the things that are just a little bit different that have the same outcomes that we're focused on, right? But they just have a little bit of a different process. Now we're going to split these things into two. We're going to have two challenges and two things that identity brings value, starting on customer, then the workforce, and again, customer and workforce. So from a customer perspective, registration can be painful if you don't just sign in with you put your email address, and then you don't have to put a long form. If you have to fill out a long form just to get registered, that's friction, and that'll result for your business in anonymous checkouts or even shopping cart abandonment or what have you. You don't get to know your customer that way. On the inside, how do we go about getting access to things? This should be all familiar. Manual provisioning, having to fill out forms, PDFs, and send them and fax them. This is still a reality in some places, believe it or not. Right? But on the side that identity helps the business out, we provide social registration, progressive sign-up, so that you only have to fill out the information that is necessary at the time, so it's easy, dynamic registration forms. And then, of course, on the inside, we've got automated provisioning, full access on day one, reduce your spending process, get increased security. Anyone who's been doing identity for any amount of time knows these types of benefits, right? But these things are not necessarily so different in the outcomes that we're looking for. We're looking for the person who's trying to do something to get past the part that they aren't really there to do, which is signing up or getting access early without having to have friction there, right? Next thing that's similar, passwords. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we're all familiar with it, but there's a password issue with customers. There's a password issue in the enterprise. The idea is the same, right? So we've known about single sign-on for a long time, and we know that we need creative solutions for passwords for customers. So in the customer environment, how do we move beyond passwords? We're looking at Authentication Journeys, which is how can I make it so that when someone wants to sign in, it's not binary. Based on what application they're trying to get to, based on what level of assurance is required, then we pass that along. Maybe we just have a credential collector so that we see where that person's going, and then we can adjust what type of authentication experience they have. Of course, including biometrics into that, and self-service password reset when there is a password for a backstop, which there usually is, even on our iPhones. Being able to automate that, we do these things in the customer environment, right? And we have single sign-on in the enterprise, but if you look at the things like being able to do biometric login and being able to do self-service password reset, those are functions that we want in the enterprise as well, right? Why did those have to be different systems? We want a single point of strong authentication for our customers as well. That can come from the same system, more efficient workforce, right? And so these things, as they come together, we see some of this already, right? There's web access managers that the companies use different instances for, internal and external. But all of these other pieces need to come together in order to give the customers what they're actually needing, what they're demanding out there, right? So after you've signed up and after you've authenticated in the customer land, what could give a bad brand experience that identity is connected to, right? Well, you've had one experience with the brick and mortar, you've had one experience online, you've had another experience calling in to try to return something because you couldn't do it online. All of these things should become together so that you can have a good brand experience based on all the different information about you that's known. But if you don't have that information pulled together, you're still going to have a site that feels old. You're going to have a service where you don't really feel like these guys understand me, they get me, right? What's parallel to that in the workforce? Well, it's authorization, right? Not being able to get access to the things that you need when there's a rapidly changing environment. Agile teams are changing around. Different people are getting access to different systems. And still sometimes it's provisioned at point in time. It's not dynamic, right? So that's a bad experience. That's an inefficient experience for people inside the workforce. And let's not forget that this person here who just had a bad experience could be the same one who is trying to push an update to the application for the same company that's trying to give a good customer experience. So the people who are working on the internal systems need to be as efficient as possible because they're building the systems for the business that actually bring in the revenue, the top line revenue, right? So these things are interconnected. They're really not separate. And again, I'm seeing a trend that businesses are wanting to consume this as one. So if you have good brand experience, you have a single view of your customer because you've connected to all these different data sources and you've pulled them together so that you can provide that right experience right at the right time, right? Now your customer feels valued and understood, and that leads to brand loyalty and more revenue. On the inside, the people who are supporting those systems that make it easy for the customer, they have least privilege because security is important, right? They have streamlined access policies, but they've got granular authorization now, and it's dynamic so that as things change, as their attributes change, as where they report to changes, these things automatically change what they have access to, and they don't get stopped and then you'll have to open a ticket or find who to ask to get access. These things are dynamic because, again, we talked about single view of the customer. Why don't we want single view of the workforce, of the contractor, of the partner, so that we can understand all their attributes, so that we can give them the right experience, but make sure the security is there as well. It's a constant balance between experience, efficiency, security, privacy, and even compliance. So speaking of security, if an identity is compromised for a customer, that's bad for business, right? If there's an account takeover, if there's a big data breach and it's stolen, that's a problem for your business because now you've got less brand trust. You've got a stain on your brand, and that's bad. Now, security on the inside is just as important. It's the same pot of data that we're trying to protect usually, but on the inside we're talking about a lot of times insider threat, right? But these are the same requirements to try to secure this data so that the data of the customers and the data that's sensitive to the company is not stolen, is not exposed. We can address these things with the same set of capabilities. So what does that look like? How does identity add value to these two problem spaces we just talked about? Well, in the customer side, identity defense, so strong identity proofing, right? This is one where strong identity proofing is different on the customer side because in the customer environment, they're signing up and registering. You only want to get the minimal amount of information so it's low friction. And then as they want to do things that are more and more, could be risky, then you want to step them up. Then you want to get more information, right? So strong identity proofing is important there. But real-time risk and fraud detection and prevention, that's the same for the inside as well, right? So if we're doing internal threat mitigation, we want to correlate log activities with identity. We want to do that for our customers as well, detecting suspicious activity, preventing data breaches, whether they're from an internal source of an insider threat or whether they're from an exterior hacker, right? So very similar. So let's talk about the business value then to the workforce. So workforce is kind of more about productivity plus identity-enabled security. Believe it or not, these days that can help lead to employee retention because nobody wants to have, try to sign into a VPN on only a machine that's allowed and not be able to have borderless access, right? So a better experience for the employees plus improved cybersecurity for the entire system. Now, on the customer side, the great digital experience is really important and is still then, plus a focus on security, fraud prevention in this case, leads us to customer loyalty and business growth as well. And so what does this all look like if we put it together in the end? So kind of in closing here, the need that we have is digital transformation for all identities. Whether it's identities of things, we talked about connected cars a little bit, right? But what about the identities of microservices in the internal environment? What kind of identities do they have? Where's that identity object managed? How are the credentials managed and how do they authenticate? How do we control what a microservice or some other connected device, what data can it send to another microservice or connected device? What data can it read from the cloud? What data can it publish to the cloud? Who can control that device directly? So now relationships between people and devices. What organizations own those devices, right? So whether it's customers plus their devices or workforce and their devices, all of these things basically lead to the need for, and this is again in the customer's view, what do they care about? Delightful and efficient experiences and intelligent and transparent security. So kind of to review, up on the customer side, yes, we have seamless registration. Down in the workforce, we have automated provisioning. But again, those are going towards the same outcome, which is to get to what you need to do and not have identities get in the way, right? Borderless access, talked a little bit about that, but we've all been spoiled by Google, Apple, and Amazon in terms of the experience that we can get being on the internet, being on any device, ordering anything and having it at your doorstep tomorrow, right? It's really, really good user experience. And that experience should also be part of an efficient workforce as well, right? Zero trust, that's been a big topic at this conference, and it's a big topic out in the identity space right now, but it's an old term. Zero trust came from Forrester quite a few years ago, 10, 15, I don't know, a long time ago, right? And at the time, it was about the network. And it has been elevated to identity. Gartner calls it CARTA, continuous assessment of risk and trust, or something, trusted access, right? Google calls it Beyond Corp. But the whole idea is that the whole idea behind all of those things, a part of it, is obviously you don't automatically trust an identity. Someone just said in a previous talk that I was in, it's not about if it's trusted, but are you trustworthy at the moment? I forgot the exact phrase, but it's about continuous authorization. It's about continuously understanding if you're trusted right now, not if you're just always trusted, right? And that's the borderless access. Privacy, of course, on both sides, single sign-on on both sides, and delightful experiences. So as these come together, my prediction is going to be that as we move forward in time, that more and more customers, and this is what I'm seeing with the customers that I talk to, are going to expect that they can manage their needs for identity for their business more together instead of having to manage so many different systems that talk differently and that do things differently. So in closing, this kind of gets back to what Ian was talking about around how we've spent a lot of time as identity professionals building out all this plumbing and building out all the frameworks, but really we just need to start delivering the value on the top end, right? And so I think this is a way that that's all going to come together. So that's my talk. I do have actually 2 minutes for any questions. And if not, that brings us to the end of the session. So thank you all very much for attending.